Well, we got a new title sequence for Severance, and oh man, it is crazier and creepier than season 1. So I'm gonna break this down and talk about what I think things might mean, all the clues, symbolism, image by image. Okay, so we see Mark getting out of bed, and this bed motif is something that was used in the Severance season 1 credit sequence, but here it transitions over to what looks to be the testing floor elevator, which I think it's pretty safe to say that is going to get explored more this season. So this elevator imagery then transforms into Mark and his head turning into a balloon, and we've seen this balloon a lot in the marketing, which can be symbolic of freedom for Mark, could also represent maybe fragility, and I don't know, episode 1 literally Mark has balloons with his face on it, but I do feel like everything in this show, it's symbolic of something. Next we see Mark descend this staircase with more balloons, but now we get to the main symbolic motif in this credit sequence, which is the brain. But I also kind of like how Mark is searching for something here. Here he seems less passive versus the opening credit sequence for season 1. This Mark feels more proactive, actively seeking the truth, like in season 1, but this time Mark seems more in control of the narrative. We see Mark clearly searching his brain, but we see these crazy Heli R looking creatures. It's definitely meant to be her because we see the actress's title card as well. We know that Outie Heli isn't Egan, and there's something really sinister about this effigy of her. And it's kind of interesting that this is like meant to be kind of like in water, so I don't know if this is some kind of foreshadowing, but I think it's pretty interesting nonetheless. Or you could take it another way and say maybe the water is meant to be like making her anew or something maybe transformative with her character. So I don't know, that's going to be really interesting to see how exactly her character evolves this season. Innie and Outie Mark meet here, and it's interesting because they don't fight or anything. It's more of just them kind of acknowledging each other, and I think this speaks to the major themes of this credit sequence as a whole, which is the blending of Innie and Outie Mark. Maybe this means that they finally find a way to communicate with one another, or of course Mark could become unsevered, which is, I think, definitely where I think the show is heading, if not this season, but maybe in a future season. So, holy crap, these creepy babies. Like, I don't know what these are supposed to be. My first thought was clones, and I know there's some divisiveness whether or not the show is truly going to go down this cloning route, but I don't know. This seems like this is what it's trying to tell me, but if y'all have alternative theory, please weigh in the comments, but this is some nightmare fuel. Next, we see Mark inside a severed chip, and the other Mark helps pull him out of the brain, which, again, it seems obvious. It seems like they're setting up Mark to be unsevered, but obviously we don't really know that for sure, but I find this really, really intriguing nonetheless. Here we see Mark landing in a coffee cup with Bert's face on it, and I don't know, I think this just means Bert is definitely going to play a bigger role this season. Also, there's a really interesting moment that happens really quick where Mark is looking at his reflection. So I don't know. I think this could tie back to, again, him being a little bit more proactive, a little bit more reflective about what's going on with himself and with Lumen, other people around him. We see Mark jump, and he lands in a very familiar image of Mark's head working, which is almost identical to the one from season 1's credit sequence. I also wanted to point out that Mark jumps willingly here, which I think again just confirms my thoughts on him having more agency and just being bolder this season. This image morphs into a goat, which, you know, we knew from the trailer we were going to get more goat stuff, so I'm pretty excited about that, but that's really all I have to add. In this shot, we see Mark in the snow, which lines up with a scene that we saw in the trailer where the gang are in this snowy wasteland. And again, we get hit with the balloon imagery. I also wanted to point out that there is a car in this background here. It's kind of faint, so I did enhance this image for y'all. I find this really interesting. I wonder if this is symbolic of the car crash that supposedly killed Gemma / Miss Casey. And we know her character is going to play a huge role this season, so I don't know. I don't think that's a stretch. I wonder if we're going to see how that played out. We see Mark use a balloon and he flies up and into his Outie's head. And we see a table full of pills. So again, does this mean Mark is going to try to unsever? We see Innie Mark in work attire carrying Outie Mark from a curtain that looks like the testing floor elevator. But what's really interesting is when the pair cross over, Innie Mark isn't wearing his black suit anymore. I don't know what this means, but I thought it was worth pointing out to y'all. Now we see Innie and Outie Mark in a goat field, and we saw this from the trailer, so of course more goat stuff is going to happen. That's really nothing new, but I don't know. I like how ominous this looks. This quickly morphs into Miss Cobell holding the field like a book, and we see Innie Mark inside her head. The placement of Mark is really interesting. Could this be symbolic of her being obsessed with Mark? Next, we see Mark running down a hallway, and this is so creepy looking, and maybe Mark is just trapped in one of Cobell's scheme. She's certainly been the puppet master in season 1, and most likely in season 2 as well, so that'll be interesting to see how that plays out. We see Mark running down the dreaded black elevator, which we think is the testing floor elevator. And yeah, I don't think this is telling us anything new. We definitely know that this is going to play a big part in this season. And I don't know, I can't wait to find out what exactly is going on with this testing floor. At the end of this hallway, we see Gemma / Miss Casey, which again just echoes how important her character is certainly going to be this season. But what's also really interesting is the image of her and Helly start to blur, so I think this is a pretty obvious nod to this weird kind of love triangle. Okay, so we see Mark back in bed and there's snow all around him, but holy crap, this freaky little baby shows up. The baby stops and looks directly at Mark. Why is there snow around here? I've been puzzling over this for a while, and I'm honestly not sure. Obviously, I think it ties into what we saw in the trailer with the gang going into this snowy wasteland. I did enhance this image, and y'all, am I crazy or is this Keir Egan? Does this confirm cloning? This leads to the final image, which is hands coming out of Mark's head, end of title sequence. So, holy crap, this really ups the strange factor, which leads me to think that this season is going to be a wild ride. The biggest clues is this Innie and Outie Mark coming together more, and of course the search for Miss Casey / Gemma, the latter of which we knew of course was going to be a huge narrative through line this season. But I don't know, I'm kind of convinced of the whole cloning angle now, unless this could be all a very clever misdirect. But now I want to hear what y'all think, and did I miss anything? I tried my best to comb through a lot of this, but I may have missed some little clues, so I really want to hear if I missed anything and what y'all think about some of these theories. Thanks for watching, and hey, while you're hanging out with me, please check out these other videos, and I will see y'all in the next one.